90-Day Fiance, Shantel Everett silent battle. A collapse, a reckoning, a rebirth. There are moments in life when everything shifts. The air thickens. Time stretches and bends beneath the weight of something vast. Too heavy to name, too swift to prepare for. Moments when what you believed about love, family, strength, and identity crumbles in silence. For Chantel Everett, that moment didn't come with a tabloid scandal or a televised heartbreak. It didn't scream. It whispered, quiet, lingering, dangerous. It began beneath the surface, a quiet, creeping pain that slithered into her bones. A fatigue sleep couldn't cure. A discomfort she wore like a second skin. To the world, she was still Chantel, poised, polished, and powerful. Interviews, confessions, red carpet smiles. She did it all with grace. She carried herself like royalty, even as her body began to betray her. What the cameras didn't catch was the unraveling happening within. At first, it was easy to dismiss. A strange tightness in her stomach, a dull ache after long shifts. She pushed through it. She always had. Frailty had no place in her world. Not as a nurse, not as a daughter, not as a black woman under the microscope of fame. She had survived a very public divorce. She had stood in the flames of internet judgment and rebuilt herself in front of millions. Pain, she believed, was just another obstacle, something to walk through, head held high. But this pain wasn't passing. Weeks turned into months. Discomfort became agony. At night, she curled into herself like a child, clenching against stabbing waves of pain. But still, she said nothing. Vulnerability, to her, was a threat, weakness, a luxury she couldn't afford. Until the morning her body gave out. Chantel collapsed in her bathroom, alone. The fire in her abdomen burned through her chest, robbed her breath, turned her limbs to rubber. She crawled to her phone. By the time paramedics arrived, she couldn't speak, only pointed at her belly, eyes wide with terror. In the hospital, surrounded by the sterile hum of machines, Chantel Everett became something she never expected. The patient. She was no longer in control. No longer the caretaker. She lay beneath fluorescent lights, vulnerable, voiceless, questioning everything. The diagnosis hit like thunder, a severe abdominal wall defect, the result of years of emotional trauma, unrelenting stress, and physical strain. Her core, the literal center that held her together, was tearing apart. Her organs were fine, her spirit shaken. Her body? At war. It wasn't cancer. It wasn't fatal. But left untreated, it would grow worse. This wasn't about aesthetics. It wasn't about enhancement. It was survival. Surgery wasn't optional. It was mandatory. And outside that hospital room, another storm brewed. Karen Everett, mother, lioness, firebrand, had always fought for her daughter with ferocity that could not be tamed. She had bared her soul and sharpened her voice on national television to shield her child. She had challenged everyone and everything that dared to wound her baby. But this was different. There was no villain to drag, no ex to confront, no social media army to shut down. The enemy was inside her daughter's own body, quiet, cruel, and relentless. When Karen saw her daughter in that hospital bed, pale, trembling, machines beeping steadily beside her, something broke. The woman who had once faced down the world for her children now stood frozen, hands trembling, knees giving way. This time, she couldn't protect her. She could only pray. Chantel Everett's story isn't just about pain. It's about the unseen battles women fight behind flawless makeup and curated smiles. It's about the cost of resilience, the pressure of performance, and the point where strength becomes silence. But more than anything, it's about rebirth through the fire, about a woman whose world collapsed, not to end her, but to rebuild her stronger. And the story isn't over. This is just the beginning. When the strong finally shatter, she walked silently, straight down the corridor, past the whitewashed walls, and into the dim stairwell. No camera crews, no producers, no reality to perform for, just concrete silence. And then she crumbled. Out of sight, Karen Everett collapsed to the ground. From her chest erupted the kind of sobs that come from somewhere ancient and buried, deep trembles tearing through her like thunder cracking through sky. She wept for what felt like years, for pain she hadn't allowed herself to feel, for the ache of watching her daughter suffer, for the weight Chantel had carried without complaint. Strength, it turned out, being both the mask and the prison. Karen had told her daughter to stay strong 1,000 times, without understanding that it was that very strength keeping them apart. Watching your child hurt does something cruel. It coils itself around your ribs and squeezes until everything you thought you were begins to break. And no matter how composed, no matter how sharp-tongued or battle-tested, at her core Karen Everett was still just a mother. And in that stairwell, far from the world's judgment, she whispered the same desperate prayer over and over. Kindly, please don't let me lose her. In the operating room, the surgical team began. The procedure was long, precise, a dance of expertise and hope. They would rebuild Chantel's abdominal wall, reinforce it with mesh, re-anchor her core muscle by muscle. Piece by piece, they would stitch her body back together. But no scalpel, no sterile tool could stitch together the years she'd lost. The damage done by quiet suffering. The trauma of pretending to be okay. What needed healing wasn't just physical. It was something deeper, far older. The exhaustion of being the strong one. The lifelong grind of smiling through pain. The wound of invisibility. The kind women wear so long, they forget it's not normal to hurt all the time. This kind of healing would require something far more rare than skill. Time, grace, vulnerability. But vulnerability had never been safe for Shantel Everett. Since girlhood, she'd learned that showing pain was dangerous, that it invited mockery, scorn, labels like unstable. In public life, the stakes were even higher. Faltering in front of an audience meant becoming a meme, a headline, a punchline. So she built a fortress. Wit, beauty, composure, irony. She became untouchable. And it worked until it didn't. When she woke from surgery, her mother was there, silent, present, holding her hand with a tenderness words couldn't reach. There was no script for what they were living through, just a quiet recognition between two women who had both reached their limit.